What if I told you all the negative emotion you feel in a day and all the negative activities you inexplicably partake in can all be traced back to one condition? Have you ever felt a certain force within you that keeps you from certain actions but pushes you towards others? Have you ever wondered why the life you want to live, the life you were destined to live, feels like it's sitting behind some spiritual paywall, but the life that's slowly destroying you is just like running on autopilot? The answer is not that you're just lazy or unmotivated. It's that there is an outdated part of your psyche that is actively working against you and your dreams as a survival instinct. And it's called resistance. So before we start to combat resistance, we have to learn what it is. What is resistance? First thing to understand is it's an internal feeling. It's an internal emotion. It's not an external problem. It may manifest like that. It manifests in all types of ways, any way it can to get you to do what it wants. So it manifests as addiction, as anxiety, as depression. But you have to understand it's not that addiction itself is resistance. What you're feeling is an emotion. Say, whenever you try to do something productive, you'll feel that emotion rise in you that's like, oh, no, can we do anything else? You'll start feeling like, oh, I could really go for some Maccas right now. And it's like, you weren't hungry like 2 seconds ago, but the second you're going to try to do something hard, out of nowhere, you're just starving. All these manifestations are just ways that we kind of self-soothe and we kind of self-medicate with these addictions. So we feel that emotion, it rises up in us, it makes us feel uncomfortable, and then instead of just confronting that emotion, feeling it, persevering through it and getting the thing done, instead we think, God, how do I numb myself from this feeling as quickly as possible? What is the goal of resistance? Like, why did we evolve to have it in the first place? It seems incredibly unproductive. Well, you have to think back in olden times, back in when we were fucking Homo sapiens, we didn't have a whole lot of resources, or at least resources were hard to get, sometimes scarce. And so resistance kind of stopped us from getting overly excitable and being like, oh, I want to go for a run. I just want to go for a jog, get in shape. And it's like, well, maybe we should find food first, or shelter, or just make sure we don't get eaten by a lion. So you can kind of think about resistance as a screening process. It was like, if something was important enough to beat resistance, then it was worth doing. If it wasn't important enough to overcome that resistance, well, then you probably don't need to do it. And so you shouldn't be expending energy on it. So it was an energy preserver. But the problem is, since then, it's become outdated because in this society, at least if you live in a first world country and if you're as privileged as I am and a lot of other people I know are, resources aren't very scarce. If you need food, you just have to walk to the shops and buy some at the grocery store. Or better yet, just get it fast food. Just get it in like 2 minutes, fully made meal. There you go, high calorie, get fat, go crazy. So there isn't a lot of drive to do things because they're not really imminent to our survival. Even if we were to kind of completely fuck up at work and just be like, oh, can't be asked, and we got fired, you can apply for the dole, that's what we have here, or like Centrelink, like where you get payments for being unemployed. And I'm not against that at all, but I'm just making a point that even if you were to lose your means of, access to funds so that you can access all of this abundance of resources, even if you were to lose access to that, the government will just give it back to you anyway. Obviously at a smaller rate. But my point is that it's like quite easy to become lethargic and apathetic towards life in these conditions because there's a huge safety net around our society. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing. It's a good thing, obviously. But it does create this problem where we don't have enough drive to overcome our resistance in a lot of cases. because excelling in whatever it is you're trying to pursue usually isn't life or death. And so resistance can very easily just push it over, and you'll just stay in bed and do nothing. And I've experienced a lot of this myself. Resistance is a bitch. Procrastination is kind of the name of the game, and I procrastinate way too much. And it's just because, I don't have to do it. I can push it off to tomorrow. I can push it off to next week, to next month, even next year. And I'd still be okay. I'd be unfulfilled. I'd be depressed. I'd be anxious. I'd live an awful, miserable life of quiet desperation, but I'd be okay. And so that's what we do as humans. We just push it off because it's easier to do that, at least in the short term. So that is the goal of the resistance, to understand why it came to be, what it actually is, what its function is. It's not just some demonic force within you. It's not just the devil. It is actually trying to help you in a way. It's just outdated. How do we combat it? Well, I think the number one thing you want to change, like off the bat, the first thing is to redesign your environment. And the number one thing you want to do within your environment is design it in a way where you're increasing friction on a task that you don't want to be engaging in, such as watching TV, eating junk food, scrolling your phone, whatever it is. And you want to be decreasing friction on the things you want to do in life, the important things. So I'll give you an example from my life. I've recently unplugged my TV, taken the cable out, and I've put it in a box. And so I don't have access to my TV anymore unless I was to go into that box, find the right cable, pull out my home entertainment unit, whatever, and plug it in. Now, that's a lot of friction just to watch a bit of TV. And so you want to do this with all areas of your environment. You want to figure out, what are the things that I don't want to do? How do I make it as hard as I can to do these things? And what are the things I do want to do? And how do I make it as easy as possible for me to do these things? And that way, you don't have to actively use willpower. Your environment will then kind of shape you. That's the first thing to do. Second is to call it by its name. So it's a sneaky motherfucker. Sometimes it will give you valid arguments as to why you shouldn't do something. Like, don't go on that run today. You went to the gym yesterday. You had soccer training the day before. You've been working hard. You don't need to go. Even maybe some self-love. Let's go get a thick shake. And you're like, you know what? How do I argue with that? I want a thick shake. And I have been working hard. But if you were really honest with yourself, you'd know that that is just that resistance talking. It just wants to do anything of less effort, and it's just gonna whisper sweet nothings in your ear all day long on how to get out of the things you're meant to show up for. So whenever it comes up, you need to call it by its name. You have to register that it's resistance, because it will come in all different forms. As I said, depression, addiction, anxiety, all of it will manifest from one single cause of resistance, and you need to address that. Because if you don't, you're just going to be fighting demons that aren't actually there, because they're just symptoms of a different cause. And that's why you might feel like your life is just an unending mess of different emotions and problems that you just can't really understand. It's because it's just this one thing that can just disguise itself so well that whenever you try and work on your depression or your anxiety or your procrastination, you're never actually aiming at the right target. And so you never make any real progress. And the third and final step, which is kind of a add-on to the previous one, which is to call it by its name. So once you realize, the alarms have gone off, oh no, just had a thought of resistance. And usually it's not just a thought, it will be an emotion that then produces a thought. So you'll feel that resistance as an emotion. And then again, the first symptom is a thought. And that thought will be like, go get a cheeseburger. And then the further symptom down the line is that you go get that cheeseburger. And then you eat that cheeseburger and then you feel like shit and you repeat. But the first symptom is the thought. But the real cause is the emotion. So what you want to do is called a micro meditation. Whenever you feel that emotion rise and you get that thought, You just want to let it wash over you. You just want to feel it. You want to express it. You don't want to repress it. The more you repress it, the more it's just going to live dormant in your body. So you just kind of have to breathe, focus on your breathing, feel the emotion, register that it's just resistance, and just let it pass. And that's what I call a micro meditation. Only takes 30 seconds to a minute. And you want to do this pretty much every time you feel it, which could be like 30, 50, 100 times a day. And you're not going to catch all of them, but if you can get, 10 micro meditations, 5 micro meditations a day, where you're feeling that resistance, and you just let it wash over you, you let it go, and then you do the thing you were going to do anyway, you're slowly going to build up so much mental strength towards resistance, and you will see your life change drastically. And so, I really hope that you have taken something from this video. I really hope you apply it. And I'd love to hear your results if you do end up trying this, because I think it's an extremely powerful technique. Even if you don't do the micro meditation or the call it by its name, even if you just switch your mindset to realizing, you know what, all this negative emotion is just resistance, and that's something I can fight. That's something I can kind of combat every single day and just try and get the work done anyway. Even if you just make a simple mindset shift and maybe change your environment, I think you're going to have tremendous results. Love to hear about them. But for now, I would say that's about it.